Good afternoon, Mobile County fourth graders. It's me again, Mary Cook. I'm here to do an ELA reading lesson with you this afternoon. I sure did miss you Monday afternoon, but I'm here today and I'm so glad that I am. We are going to continue learning reading of literature, fourth grade, first standard, where we are taking text evidence and we are building from that text evidence for pulling out and really finding, what is the author trying to tell us that he or she has not directly stated. So that is calling drawing conclusions and making inferences. We have been looking at this standard for quite some time now, just over the last couple weeks. And not only that, boys and girls, but you've covered this standard in kindergarten, first, second, third grade, and throughout first, second, third, and now into fourth quarter. So this is not new to you, boys and girls. So as I said, we're going to go ahead and jump right into the lesson. But before I do, we're going to look at the standard once again, just to really focus our attention on it. So last Thursday, when I did the lesson with you, I showed you the standard. It is referring to details and examples in a text when explaining what the text says explicitly. And if you remember, that word explicitly means directly stated, and when drawing inferences from the text. Again, the drawing inferences parts mean that when the author does not directly state what he or she is thinking. So boys and girls, that's what we're going to talk about today and examine a little bit closer throughout our lesson this afternoon. I want to remind you, boys and girls, that in our standard, just like I reminded you last week, the word text is mentioned 3 times. Anytime someone repeats things more than once, you know that it is extremely important. You have the word text here, here, and here. So if you see it 3 times, obviously it's very important. And I know, boys and girls, that I can't remember everything that is stated in a text. So I know that I've got to go back to the text, go back to the text, go back to the text. So boys and girls, how much more would you need to go back to the text as well? And so in this standard, reading of literature, fourth grade, first standard, it is reminding us that we need to refer back to the text and those specific examples that the author is giving us. Our essential question today, boys and girls, is how do we infer or conclude information that is not directly stated in the text? So I'm going to teach you how you need to infer or draw conclusions based on the specific details that an author gives you. And also, our objective today is to use explicit details in a text to answer implicit or questions from the text that the author does not directly state. Taking a look at our PowerPoint today, I would like to give you a little bit of background knowledge and just kind of tickle your brain a little bit or activate your brain on drawing conclusions or making inferences. Again, boys and girls, this is one of our first critical standards to cover throughout fourth quarter. The critical standards, obviously, with the word critical, means that it is a very extremely important standard that you will need throughout your reading career. Now, if you talk to any of your family members, they will tell you that they draw conclusions and make inferences all the time as they drive, when they play a game, anytime that they are encountering something where a detail is given, but everything is not spelled out for them, so to speak. So looking at our PowerPoint at drawing conclusions and making inferences, we know that it is critical standard, 4th grade, 1st standard. So drawing conclusions and making inferences is an educated guess of what's going on in the text based on the clues or the evidence given. Again, it is an educated guess. So it's not just a guess that you're just given a guess out of left field. You have to use the text evidence using the clues given. All right? So your inferences or your conclusion must be supported by the text and based on the text. Again, going back to that standard, the text is in there 3 different times. So make sure you're going back to the text. And if you'll take a look at this PowerPoint, I see a detective. And there's a reason why I put a detective in there. I want you, boys and girls, to be that reading detective. Use that imaginary magnifying glass to go back in. Use those fingers and really find those answers in the text. It may not be there directly, but you can use what you know from the text to help you solve the clue. Also, this skill, drawing conclusions and making inferences, is necessary. Again, it's a critical skill, boys and girls, that you will need for the rest of your life. So this skill is necessary when the author does not explain everything directly and explicitly within the text. So there are times, and as you've gotten older and as you've encountered reading texts, you've seen, boys and girls, that the reading difficulty level has gotten more and more difficult, or it has gotten harder, so to speak. So that's what's occurred. You have had to obviously started to draw conclusions and make your inferences. You are going beyond the author's words. Oh my goodness, when I saw that word beyond, do you know who I thought of? Do you see him in this PowerPoint? Yes, I thought of Buzz Lightyear. I thought of to infinity and beyond, just like Buzz Lightyear. So you, boys and girls, are going above and beyond what the author is telling you, just like a detective has to when he or she is solving a crime scene or using the clues to figure out what's going on or what happened prior to what took place. So you, as the reading detective, are going beyond the author's words to understand what is not said. What is not said or not stated in the text. That's right. This is out of the box thinking. So you're going above and beyond, and you, boys and girls, are thinking out of the box. Wow. Also, drawing conclusions and making inferences is referred to as reading between the lines. Now, the lines are the actual lines in the text. So, in other words, the lines refer to the actual reading. So, it means that you, as the reader, are trying to figure out things that are not directly stated. Also, I want you to keep in mind that your conclusion or your inference may be different than your neighbors, the person sitting next to you, in this case, maybe your family member, or when you do get to go back to your classroom, maybe even your classmate. And that is possible because we all have different background knowledge. We all have different experiences, and we all have different perspectives. I say in my classroom all the time that we all look at the world with different goggles. So I come to this world with my own background knowledge. And I've even taught identical twins that even though they look the same and most of the time they have very similar upbringings and they do very similar activities and sports, however, what they feel and what they go through are very different sometimes. So keep that in mind too. What you may be thinking and what you may be feeling may be very different than someone else's, and that's okay. So those are some things that are very important to remember about drawing conclusions and making inferences. So you may be wondering, what does it mean to make an inference or draw a conclusion? Ms. Cook, I'm still a little bit, what? What does it mean? Well, again, we're talking about literature because that L in RL stands for literature, which is dealing with stories primarily. Now, it can also deal with plays and poetry as well if necessary, but we're going to focus our attention on stories. So a story has primarily 3 elements. Characters, they are the who. Plot, that is the what and the why. And in the plot, the climax and the turning point takes place. The setting is the where and the when. And boys and girls, if you'll look, I changed the font. I made it bold. I even put asterisks because this is the main. The plot is going to play a major factor in inferencing and conclusion. Now, the characters. I really want you to pay attention in what the characters say, their dialogue. And in the dialogue, you're going to see quotation marks. And in their behavior. Think about their actions and how they react to each other. Now, think about this. Here are some possible examples that could take place within a story. If someone, such as a character, has hands on their hips, what does that tell you about how they're feeling? Now, they didn't say anything, but their hands were on their hips. Yep, you're probably right. They're probably not all too happy, are they? Well, what about this next example? If they toss their hair over their shoulder, what do you think that might mean? Yep, you're right. They probably didn't like what was said or done, or they may not be happy with what's going on right there. See how good you are at this? You already are good at this. What about this next one? Oh, I know you'll be good at this one because you've probably already done this one today. What about roll your eyes? I bet your mom caught you today. Oh, I bet you try to do that when your mom's not looking, like my 4th grader right over here. Exactly. When you roll your eyes, you're like, whatever. Sometimes the author will not tell you that they're not happy with the situation, but they'll say, Karen rolled her eyes at her mother. Exactly. So stomp their feet, cry their eyes out. All of these are examples of what the character could be acting or reacting, but they didn't tell you their feelings. They just told you how they behaved. But we know, because we're good readers, what that means. Also, boys and girls, this is a great time for the author to use figurative language. And many times the author will use figurative language for dramatic or even visualizing purposes for the reader so that you can get a mental image of what's taking place within the story. For an example, cry their eyes out. That tells me as the reader, oh my goodness, that character was extremely upset. Also, the story setting, the where and the when, can tell me a lot about what could happen within the story. So all of these play a part in drawing a conclusion or making an inference. From last Thursday, I was telling you that an inference and a conclusion is like a puzzle piece. You take what you're reading and what you already know and you put it together. And that's exactly what's going on when you draw a conclusion and make an inference. You take the text evidence and your background knowledge and put it together. Again, one without the other one does not work. So you take the details from the text and or picture clues along with what you already know about the topic or subject, the setting, or what it means when a character behaves or acts, or based on what the character says. And then you figure out in your mind what is happening. So you draw a conclusion or make an inference. Now, it is time then to put your conclusion or your inference to the test. And this is a two-part question. You need to stop and put your conclusion or inference to the test by asking, is my inference or conclusion based on details in the text? Can I underline where I found the details in the text? If I can, then I can move on to question 2. Does my answer make sense? Did I answer the question as it is asked? And we know that the very first question on, or the very first check on the writer's checklist is to make sure that we know what is being asked so that we answer all parts of the writing task. So make sure, boys and girls, that after you finish your inference or conclusion, that your conclusion, your inference, is based on the text and it makes sense because you've answered the question. Now we are going to move to a text, and the name of the text is Thinking Out Loud. But before we do, I want to talk to you about the genre of this text, because the genre of the text is very important because it allows you to know, hey, wait a minute. It gets your mind set up and ready for when a story may take place, where it takes place, and who might be in the story, and what might actually occur. So, science fiction is the genre of this story. And I put a thought bubble because science fiction takes place in your imagination, which takes place in your mind. Science fiction is based on imagined future scientific or technological advances and major social or environmental changes. Also, science fiction frequently portrays space or even time travel, and it may even include life on other planets. Many times you may see robots or even futuristic means of entertainment, or transportation often is mentioned. Now, boys and girls, I know your parents or maybe even grandparents may remember a show on TV called The Jetsons, and that was more like a science fiction for us. So we're going to look very quickly at this text because my time is running out. The name of this is Thinking Out Loud. It says, read the story, use the study buddy, and the close reading to guide your reading. I want to talk to you for a few moments because the very first word is a person's name. Boys and girls, anytime you see someone's name or a word that you're not for sure and it begins with a capital letter, please remember to try your very best, but don't get too bogged down into those words. Remember, names can have different spellings, and boys and girls, they can have different pronunciations. So don't worry and don't stress yourself out about that. Okay, boys and girls? Well, believe it or not, my time has already run out with you, boys and girls. I sure have enjoyed my time with you, and I hope that you've enjoyed your time with me. Parents, guardians, grandparents alike, and fourth graders, we greatly appreciate your time and your support and everything, boys and girls, and adults that you've given us during these last 2 weeks. We appreciate everything, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope that you have the rest of the afternoon. It's great. Please stay safe during this wild weather that we're having. We also hope that tomorrow ends a great week for you. We are here for you if you need us. Please call us, call the helpline, and I hope that you stay on for Miss Weekly's 4th grade math lesson to follow. Thank you, boys and girls. Bye-bye.